Hi, welcome. Just getting everything organized here. See if I can adjust the lighting. Hopefully that's okay. Well, it looks like it's just me and a couple other people. So, hello, welcome. My name is Sadhana, if you're not a regular follower of mine. And tonight I thought I would carry on with what I was talking about during the New Beginning 2020. And I have made a commitment to myself to start a regular live stream. And so I'm going to be doing this every Thursday evening. So it's Thursday evening for me in on the west coast of Canada. And I'm going to start just going kind of following with my series of deck combinations. Oh, hi. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm in Canada, so we had our Thanksgiving October, second Monday of October. So happy Thanksgiving to the folks in the US who are watching. Um, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So carrying on with my deck combo series because it's really, hi, Nina. It's really been, I've had really good feedback from that series and just people encouraging me to continue to do some teaching around reading intuitively. So that's what I'm going to do with this Thursday night thing. And tonight I've chosen the Chariot card because I wanted to talk about that the other night when I was on for the New Beginning 2020. And so I just think it's a really good card to start with for this series. And I would really encourage you either in the chat or in the comments below, if you're watching this after the fact, to put in your request for cards that you would like me to include in this series or combinations of cards, because there's going to be combos that are difficult to work with as well as individual cards. And then I guess the next, the first really important thing is that cards are never read in isolation. Of course, if you're doing a single card draw, but that's not very common with the tarot. But we are going to be looking at a single card today, and I will be talking in reference to other cards as well too. So yeah, so let's just kind of this is the borderless US Games version of the Chariot. So from the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I'll be looking mostly at Rider-Waite-Smith clone cards tonight and just kind of really looking at the energy and the symbols and what I do with this card in general. And I'd love to hear from you about, your favorite Chariot cards and how you read the Chariot and what that card really means to you. So basically, for me, this is a card of moving forward. Definitely, it's a card of action. And when I see this card in a reading, it is time to step forward. And in preparing for tonight, there was just so many things that are coming to mind, and it's hard to have a conversation with just a couple of people. But I really encourage you to let's make this a conversation. Um, yeah, and for those of you that are watching it later, please let's carry on the conversation after. So besides moving forward, this is a card for me about balance, and you'll see in most tarot decks that there are either two horses or two unicorns or two sphinxes, and usually they are opposing colors. And so, first and foremost, what I think about is this balance comes into mind. And then we also have issues of willpower and power. And what's the difference between taking action and being powerful and you're listening to your inner kind of intelligence and you're, using your own will and your own drive. So all these issues of control always come up when this card arrives in a reading, especially if you've got other really kind of powerful cards. And for me, one of the really tricky things, this is the card that I showed the other night. This is the Robin Wood card. Robin Wood. Is that the right? Yeah, the Robin Wood Tarot. And in this one, we have unicorns as opposed to sphinxes. And the chariot driver has a harp. So instead of reins, he is controlling, if you want to use that word, the mystical, magical animals with his music, with the music from the harp. And so that's in itself, that's a really kind of beautiful metaphor to think about. Just thinking about the music of the harp and how that it kind of that scene in Harry Potter when the three-headed dog is protecting. He's on that trap door, and Nina likes the Tower of Empowerment Chariot card. I'll have to look that up. I don't have it. And underneath there's that plants, and then they go down to that chess game underneath, and that dog is magically being controlled by the harp. So there's something about the music and the subtle energy of sound. This card has so many layers, and one of the things for me that's really, really challenging with this card, and if you look at these two cards, so Robin chose to illustrate it with a white background, and traditionally it has a yellow sky. So the astrological association with this card is Cancer, which is water. And so you can bring in all of the astrological associations of of Cancer to this card. But for me, that gets all kind of muddled up with the issues of control and will, which is really what I want to get back to. Because there is so much that goes into kind of pulling out what you need in a particular card. And when I read intuitively, I have a look at all the surrounding cards. And if there was a lot of kings, in the reading, a lot of kind of maybe knights and kings in the reading, or other strong, powerful cards, or if there was cards that showed hesitation, I'd be looking for clues to see which way to kind of really go with this card. So this whole issue of control and will comes from for me, the teachings through the Manipura chakra, so the solar plexus chakra, which is the element of fire. And so the element for this card is traditionally water, but the issues relate really deeply to the energy of the, um, yes, Kyle is everyday witch, to the energy of, sorry. So we have this conflict. Sorry, reading the chat and my thought getting all mixed up. The conflict between fire and water. But maybe that's not a conflict at all, because if you look at these cards, what we are doing in this card is bringing something into balance. So we have the black and the white Sphinx. We have the black and the white unicorn. And I'm going to show you other decks as well too. Kyle Liz says, everyday witch with the motorcycle and the this way, that way signs, any chariot where the charioteer isn't holding the reins and is using will and instinct to move forward. Yeah. So there's this idea of the self-empowerment, the self-control, there's kind of this like the inner wisdom, this inner knowing that is controlling the direction. I love that card in the Everyday Witch, by the way. It reminds me of Indiana Jones, the one where they're leaving the castle and heading off to Berlin. So what I wanted to, there's just so many things I want to bring in here. And if you have questions or you have comments, I really kind of look forward to hearing from you in that. So I said this solar plexus chakra, it's deeply connected to self-esteem and perception of one's own will. And there's definitely there's this inner warrior kind of energy, which we see in the chariot driver itself. And I was reading today, this was really kind of cool. Like when we actually had chariot drivers, and originally the chariot drivers there was a chariot driver and then there was a charioteer. So there was actually two people. And so the warrior gave the instructions to the chariot driver. And so together they kind of worked together. So there was this kind of magical synchronicity between the two of them and their signals and how they managed to navigate, the actual chariot with two people and perhaps one or two different animals in front. So that was something that I wasn't aware of. The the whole issue of control is going to take us back to all kinds of teachings around ego. And like I said the other day, we definitely need ego. We have to be in this world, and we need our ego to to get us to work, to get up in the morning, for all these really practical kind of three-dimensional things to function. And sometimes we need our ego to take charge in a meeting or to do certain things. But there's this really fine balance between letting the ego control and listening to that inner wisdom. And when we're working with bringing balance to the Manipura chakra, the solar plexus chakra, there's this beautiful place where we stop worrying about the control. We stop worrying about who's in the driver's seat, really. And we get to this place where we start to listen more, and we come into a place of trust, and we come into a place of just really knowing that it's not always about us. And so, in the actual conversation, in the actual language, there's fewer me, and I. And we start looking at bigger pictures, and we start listening more. And so, this is a really beautiful thing to think about when you have the chariot in a reading, because where it appears, especially if you do a spread that has certain positions and designated positions, and you're not necessarily reading with a lot of fluidity, that might be really important. So, what I want to say about that, just let me have a sip here. There's a few different, um, I don't know if you want to call them methodologies, interpretations of the tarot. So, in one school of thought, we have 21 cards divided into groups of seven. So the Fool is a zero, so it doesn't have a number. So that in that case, the Chariot is the end of the first group of seven. And in that school of thought, we have the three groups of seven. Happy Thanksgiving, be love and crystals. And then, and so that first group of seven cards is really about this world and all of the practical stuff. And I have something that I wanted to read to you. And then from there, we kind of move more into the subconscious. Rachel Polak, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. I've got a few quotes of her from here. Spiritual victory comes when we can focus all of nature as well as the unconscious energy through the conscious will. So what I'm getting at with this groups of seven, so the chariot is on that precipice of moving to that kind of next level, that next level of understanding the subconscious and working with a deeper level. And so depending on where the chariot appears in a card, it might be all about power and control, or it might be just on the verge of kind of going to something a little bit deeper. And that's really beautiful when you see that happen and you see the querent or the seeker kind of evolving in that way. And you can really kind of take your reading to a different level of message. The next thing that I think is really cool is the chariot in motion, because traditionally the chariot isn't moving, which is something to think about. And this is something that really comes in when you're reading intuitively, is you see this chariot here is actually parked and the sphinxes aren't even standing up. And in Robin's deck, the chariot is moving. So the unicorns are on their feet. And I've got a whole bunch of decks here I'm going to show you. For those of you that watch my videos, you know this is one of my favorite decks. So this is the Lily White by Celia Melsville. And the chariot, not the chariot, the horses here are definitely moving. This is one I pulled out for today. This is the Wooden Tarot. And I'm going to speak to this card on a couple different levels because it's really kind of cool. But what does it mean to you if the chariot is moving or it's not moving? And is that something you think about? Because it's kind of an important visual clue. And if we look at all of the tarot cards surrounding the chariot, and depending if yours is moving or not moving, are the cards around it static or the cards around it moving? Is this going to be like a kind of a low energy reading, or is this a reading that, is definitely taking the person forward? And so, there it's all very good and well to read all your books and take your tarot courses and learn all your traditional meanings. But these, artists have this artistic license. That's the word I was looking for. And sometimes this artistic license allows you, as the reader, to bring in this other kind of level of message. And that can be really, really helpful. I, um, yeah, so I'm kind of curious what your take is on that. This is another one that I pulled up. Do you know this one? This is the Ostera. So we got the two chess pieces, and then we have the moon on either side. And it's kind of cool that his eyes aren't showing, right? So this shows that intuitive inner mind moving, being responsible for the moving. And, the thing about this card that really intrigues me is that the speed doesn't matter. And the other thing is all of I was going to say the microcosm, the world on the snail's back. And if we look at the metaphor of mushrooms and all of the, when we look at the forest or we look at the mushrooms and all the roots and everything going down underneath and all of the interconnection and all of that. So to me, this card speaks to that, a really deep level of connection in moving forward. And it doesn't matter how fast you're going when you're this connected. So it's pretty deep card. The whole wooden tarot is a deck that takes quite a bit of reflection. Yeah, I don't want to miss out some of these. I'm just going to go through some of the things I starred here. So one of the questions and one of the keywords that I really want to, you've lost the chat. I still have the chat here. Oh, you've lost the video. You've lost the video. Okay, I'm still streaming here. It says 1835. Nothing's happened on my end. Anybody else? Audrey sees the video. Okay, cool. I'm hardwired in, so it should be okay. So one of the keywords I want to talk about is discipline, because that's a really kind of important word to think about when we're looking at the chariot. And I want to talk about the strength of the charioteer versus the strength of the next card, the strength card. If strength is the next card, I know sometimes it's justice, but there's this really, I was talking about that one school of thought where the chariot is the end of the first 7 cards, and then the next card is strength, and strength is the beginning of the next set of cards. And that's okay, Nina. I don't know who said hi, how are you, but I'm fine. 1234, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that's my question to you. What is the difference between the strength of the charioteer, right? That drive moving forward, and the strength of the strength card, the number 8 card. So that's kind of an important question. Another consideration Yeah, look at Kyle's comment here. So in the Moonchild, there's a powerful woman standing on the chariot, no movement. Yet Light Seers has a man crouching on top of a vehicle, no reins, lots of movement. hmm So, all of these things just help to build layers into your reading. Um, okay, next. I have, okay. Okay, and here is another question. Okay, Audrey says, oh, that's one I've contemplated. There's definitely overlap and continuity be and chariot. Oh, yeah, between the chariot and strength. So I want you to think about that. Like, what's the difference of the strength? Because one is, right, they look so completely different, no matter how they're illustrated. Okay, so here's another question for you. In your decks, in where the chariot card, the two animals or the two creatures, are they reconciled to one another? I mean, are they looking in opposite directions? Are they communicating with each other? Is there a connection? Is there a relationship between them? Or do they always face in opposite directions? Okay, so this one, they're facing in opposite directions. And look at this one. So I showed you this one already. So the lily white, they're facing in opposite directions. It's too bad the light doesn't stay bright like that. I don't know. I bring the card up and the brightness comes in a little bit more subtle in this one. They're not, they're kind of facing in opposite directions. So the question is, what is the result? What is the effect intuitively when you're reading the card if they are going this way or if they're actually connecting with each other? And there's a couple of, oh, I've pulled so many cards here. Let me just, I think, I'm not sure which deck it was. I went through so many chariot cards today, but I found this really beautiful one where the white horse kind of had its head down, and then the black horse was, and they were kind of connected like this. And there was this beautiful connection, which is like the inner connection you want to see with the chariot driver, like with the chariot driver and the harp, or the chariot driver with the closed eyes and things like that. So, what is the effect of that? Of this or this. And you know how I asked you the question about the strength of the eight? Well, what's the connection between the relationship of how those two animals are and the previous card, the lover's card? So in the lover's card, the two humans, usually two humans, could be two trees or two animals, are usually facing each other, often touching or intertwined in some way. Right? So there's this kind of interesting in and out thing happening. And in the lover's card, we find this deep, soulful connection. So what's happened in the chariot to, you know, it's like in the lover's card, we found this oneness. We found this beauty between left and right, feminine and masculine. We've found this, oneness. But then we get to the chariot card and all of a sudden we're back to dualism. So what's that about? And how does that? And do you bring that in? And what happens if you have these cards that kind of go back and forth between oneness and dualism? Yeah. So what if it's a different direction, same direction? Right? Good point, Audrey. So these are all, really good questions, food for thought. And I don't have the answer. And to me, it really depends on what's happening in the reading, what's happening with the surrounding cards. Okay. Another question is, what metaphorically is the chariot? The chariot itself, the actual I guess it doesn't have to be a a structured thing. It doesn't have to be an actual cart. But in a lot of the books, I'm holding up this Osho Zen book here. It talks about the chariot being the mind. So, is the chariot the mind? What does the chariot actually represent? And I'm just going to read you this little short piece. This is, if you have this book, this is on page 18. Body and mind are both vehicles. You are not the vehicle. You are the master hidden behind these vehicles. But you have forgotten completely, and you have become the cart. You have become the vehicle. This is what, I'm not going to, it's a very difficult name, calls identification. This is what in India yogis call tad atmya, becoming one with something that you are not. So this is another kind of little layer here. And so we have in this one card so many different layers, right? Are we talking about the mind? Are we talking about control, which to me, mind and control, if we're going with chakra stuff, is completely, different associations, but there's this, right? There's this complexity, there's this interweaving of all of this. And then we have this Cancer element of water, right? This card is about water. And oh my God, this is a really fun book. Do you have this book? And I don't have these cards, but this is her. This is her name is Bakara Wintner. Bakara Wintner. I believe the deck, if the deck has been created now, it's called Everyday Magic. And so here we have the fish fighting its way upstream, right? And so here we definitely have the element of water. But if you look at a deck like The Wild Unknown and many, many other decks, you see a lot of fire, right? Everything is yellow, everything is bright. And so to me, I'm thinking, okay, this is about control. This is about solar plexus chakra. This is not about water. And so am I going to bring in the element of Cancer? The Way Home Tarot, I do not have that deck either. Sorry, so I can't speak to that Chariot card. So when you read intuitively, it's really important, I think, and I'm no expert by any means, is to go with what you got and to go with the cards, the positions, the facings, what's looking at each other, to look at whether we're talking about some kind of a domination issue, we're looking at some kind of a control issue, or we're looking at something really beautiful, like moving forward. Oh, Audrey, I'm so glad you brought this up. Yes, it's like Krishna and Arjuna in the chariot. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we're on the battlefield. This is a really beautiful, beautiful story. I'll just read the whole comment here. Krishna is the divine consciousness moving the chariot forward, and Arjuna is the mind allowing himself to be guided by Arjuna, and the chariot is the body. Well, exactly. This story is just such a beautiful, beautiful teaching. And the whole time, Arjuna, so we're in the middle of a battlefield. Arjuna is the warrior by birth. That is his caste. And he's wrestling with his mind about what to do, because on the other side of the battlefield are all his cousins and his uncles. And he doesn't, because he's such a great warrior, he knows that if he engages in battle, he's going to kill all of his relatives. And so he says to Arjuna, he says, I don't know what to do. And so there's this whole pause, and it's like a freeze frame, and they stop in the middle of the battlefield, and there's this long conversation, this long poem, this long chapter, beautiful teaching in yoga and Hinduism about this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And yeah, so this metaphor, and okay, so let's leave that, just put that over there. along with everything else we've kind of put over to the side today, because there's a lot of things. These teachings, these lessons are so universal. They're all out there in the universal consciousness. And somehow they filter their way in through the tarot. They filter their way in through ancient teachings in Hindu texts. They filter their way in through Greek tragedy, Greek mythology. Plato, where's the Plato one? So if you have the Mary L, the Landscapes of the Abyss, or this is also in Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. So Plato, I'm going to move my extra large teacup out of the way here, describes, so this is long before there was ever tarot. Plato describes the chariot as a metaphor for the soul in three parts: a black horse, a white horse, and the charioteer called reason that lashes them together and drives them. The white horse, beautiful, well-bred, and civilized, ever goes up. So white horse, think masculine energy. The black horse, ill-bred, ill-tempered, and hard to control, ever goes down. The charioteer must balance these energies within himself and drive them with great difficulty into the world of the gods, where he can hopefully glimpse the ultimate truth, if even for a moment, before he once again loses control, as the horses are very difficult to control, and crashes back to earth. Few ever achieve this, and according to Plato, it takes many lifetimes, an old soul with the understanding of an artist or a philosopher, to achieve the level of self-knowledge and mastery. To glimpse the ultimate truth, even for a moment, is enough to transform your soul, make you an initiate, even after you crash. And as a human, you will crash, and you will be forever changed. So my point here is that these teachings in the tarot are so old and so layered, and maybe you don't have to know all these stories. You don't have to know all the mythology. You don't have to know all of the so-called traditional meanings. It's all out there. So my theory is this: you sit down to do a reading. I'm going to read Audrey's in a second. You sit down to do a reading. You close your eyes. You set your intention, and you take a few breaths. Do whatever you do in your ritual. And you be open to just, especially if you're talking out loud. And I really encourage you, even if you're doing a reading for yourself, to read as if you were reading for somebody else, and to force yourself to put the words to the message. Because if you practice doing that, you will begin to channel all of these teachings, all of these messages that are out there in universal consciousness, right? And then it's easy. It's really, really easy. So when I'm reading and everybody's saying, "Oh, wow, I love what you're doing. I love what you're saying. I love, like, how did you come up with that?" It's not me. It's not me. I have taken a few breaths and I'm just allowing it to come through. And it does. And it's just crazy how whatever it is needs to come through. And the other piece is that, why sometimes do I focus on, for example, why am I going to focus on the interconnectivity of I want to say phylum. What does phylum mean? Like the roots of the mushrooms all being interconnected and all of that. Or why sometimes am I going to focus on, you don't have to move too quickly. Why? Because that's what the person across the table, or that's what the person who's receiving the video link, or who's on the other side of the telephone, that's what we need to talk about. And that's why my attention is focused there. So I'm just going to read Audrey's comment out loud. A soldier gets promoted to horseback, then to charioteer, because they can see farther into the horizon, as well as not hurt, as well as not, I guess, be hurt as easily by others. Chariot is promotion, an exalted form of power. Ooh, yeah, yeah, right. And it takes some prowess, right? If you're a footman, that's definitely less to worry about and less to do. Wow. Oh, yeah. Mycelium. That's the word. Mycelium. Yeah. So whether it's mushrooms or, you just kind of sit down. I talked about this the other day too, right? The experience of being in oneness with the environment. And I was talking about putting my hands on the trees in the forest and like just really being with the energy, but that's kind of getting off track here. So we're at 36 minutes. So we're doing good for time. I'm going to keep these lives to about an hour because I know some of you are in different time zones and it might be a weird time of day for you. Okay, so next question here. So, what about bringing in the seven and looking at the sevens? Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to also say, remember I was saying there's one system where the tarot is divided into 777, and then there's the other one where you've got the two lines, and I forget what they're called. One is going up and one is going down. Doesn't really matter what they're called. And so the card that pairs with the chariot is the tower because the tower is 16, 1 plus 6 is 7. And so the tower is the more elevated, or it's the result of the chariot. So let's just talk about that for a second. Yeah, chariot plus tower. If the and this is, I don't know if these are my thoughts or where this one's coming from. I've done a lot of reading over the last couple days and just kind of contemplating because I wanted to talk about this as well the other day when I was on the chariot. If it is too ego driven, if you're not listening to your inner wisdom, if you're just kind of like the bull in the china shop plowing through things, right? Do you want to? Do you want to see the picture? I've got a really cool picture, and I can tell you the name of the system. Hold on, I'll just get my book. It's a large book. So I have quite a tarot library. This is one of 3 books. It's a Lois Scarabeo book. And this is actually, if you want to invest in one of these 3 books, not all 3 of them, this is the best one. This is the 3rd one. Yeah. So let's just think about, it's called The Dry Path and the Humid Path. So here we go, Dry Path and Humid Path. And in some of the illustrations, the card in the center has a special kind of elevated meaning. So the thing I was saying is if the chariot driver if the chariot is representing too much ego, then I think that the tower is going to be right there, like coming along very soon, very harshly. To me, the tower is about just way too much ego. Something needs to get blasted down. And let's go back to Everyday Witch, right? That sometimes we're aware of it and sometimes we're not. And perhaps if we're not aware of how ego driven we're being, the tower is going to be a surprise. But sometimes we kind of are aware that, maybe we're just like, we're aware of all of our issues of control or control issues. And so we can be more like the witch and the everyday witch who takes her wand and just blasts that stone tower down. That's such a good card. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really cool book, and it's got so many great references. So that I just wanted to introduce that and to kind of bring that into your thoughts. Yeah. And then what about the rebuilding? So so we move into this whole other layer where the rebuilding is about moving into a place of trust. And for me, the word allow, ALLOW, is such a powerful word. And you begin to allow life to happen instead of being in charge all the time. And I think this is one of the things I really wanted to talk about the other night. And that's part of I talked about being in silence and having a silence practice and things like that. And that's really just becoming a better listener and being quiet more and not being so busy, not talking so fast, not driving so fast, being more grounded. All of that is going to help you to step back and to be a better listener and to not let the ego be in the way all the time. And then you begin to rebuild from a place of trust and not from being smaller, right? Not from being smaller, but from being wiser and from being able to listen better, and just watch people's language, like watch what they're saying and how they're talking and how many times in a sentence they say, or how many times in a minute they say I or me, that kind of thing. Watch that kind of, because that will really help you with that. Here's something else I wanted to share with you. If you do not understand your basic humanity with its strengths and weaknesses, life will destroy you. I'll say that again. If you do not understand your basic humanity with its strengths and weaknesses, life will destroy you. So what does that mean, right? If you are not working cooperatively with others, if you're not recognizing, and that was something I said the other night too, was somebody who's not grounded is somebody who doesn't see their own weaknesses, right? Somebody who never says sorry, somebody who never steps back, somebody who doesn't never delegates. The chariot symbolizes maturity, accepting the limits of life, plus the faculty of speech, which is used to define existence and therefore control and control it. So there's this really fine line between all of this. And the chariot is just a really, like it's a deep, deep card. It's a really big transition between being, um, yeah, wanting to be in control all the time and stepping back a little bit. So when we have it in a reading, it's usually like it's a positive card, right? We see it as positive, moving forward. It's a yes card. And yeah, and you're right there, right? She says sevens are also about spirit or the antithesis of the ego. Um, so you can look at the surrounding sevens too that are there, which might give you more information. Um, Lost my train of thought. So anyway, all of these are just food for thought. I forgot what I was saying. If anybody can get me back on track, that would be great. Um, so yeah, so just working with all these different layers. Let's look at a couple more cards from a couple different decks. I'm going to end with that one. Okay. So my Shadowscapes Tarot, I don't actually have my daughter. I gave it to my daughter, and she is in Guatemala right now. She's at a cacao ceremony training. Uh, you were talking about wanting to be in control all the time and then stepping back. Yeah, so there's this evolution, I think, that's happening with the chariot, and you'll know in a reading whether the chariot is, in the thick of whether it's about action and doing, and yes, you need to step forward and go for it and do your project and take that job, or whether this is a kind of a different layer about evolving to another step. So this is the chariot from Shadowscapes. This is the large book that Stephanie Puimun Law has written all the descriptions for. So if you, so in this book, you get more information than from the Barbara Moore guidebook. So this is really beautiful. And so here's an example of a deck that really brings in the element of water. So we have the element of water and the element of air. And so if you read and you're working with um, reading with the elements, this is going to give you a completely different kind of intuitive message than, say, the wild unknown, where you have the horse with the sun blasting behind it, right? Because you have a completely different energy. And so here you might really be focusing on more feminine energy. However, we have a lot of air here, which to me is symbolizing not being very grounded. And so that might also be coming into this. So I just wanted to read you something here so this is from Stephanie. So this is from the artist, not from the guidebook writer. Stephanie Puey Law is the artist, and Barbara Moore wrote the guidebook for the Shadowscapes. She is winged Victory, the goddess Nike or Maeve. She comes sweeping from the skies, confident and sure of herself. She has summoned the unicorns of the sea out from the foamy depths. They serve her willingly, bowing as is ever in their nature to only purity of intent. Ooh, and so we're looking at this one, and you probably know this if you're a Harry Potter fan. Unicorns will only obey those who are pure of heart. So what does that mean to be pure of heart? Air mind is also opposing or exacerbating water emotion. Yeah, how true is that? So what does it mean to be pure of heart? What does it mean to be pure of mind, pure of heart? The very ocean swells themselves are tamed beneath the enchanted wheels of the chariot. The glittering waves crash and roar with the strength of the sea, but as she guides her unicorns across the glistening track, the waves fall still before her in a quiescent and shining mirror path. This stillness is that which is an internal motion. Oh, to this language, sorry, it's so very hard to read out loud. This stillness in that, I think there is some language issues here. Eternal motion stirs awareness in the denizens of the deeps. From underneath, the spirits of the ocean whisper to the sea god, and in a swirl of aquatic color, they dance to the surface to greet one whose willpower and mastery is so undeniable as to the capable of overcoming the wild natural fury of the seas. We need an editor for this book. So what we got here is this harmony, and this natural unspoken kind of energetic language between the elements and between the human and between the animals. And so maybe that we can take that to a similar level when we're looking at, much more basic card, and we need to look at the charioteer in relation to the charioteer in relation to the animals, if there are animals, and the animals in relation to each other. And do all of those tell the same story, or do they tell different or conflicting stories? The question could be, should you follow your head or should you follow your heart? Yeah. So it's really, um, it's quite the card, hey? It's quite the card. And I think that some cards really lend themselves to these deep soul searching questions, and others are a heck of a lot easier. And the archetypes will become apparent through really subtle messages, the little details in the pictures, little elements or little colors, and all that kind of stuff. Here's another favorite of a lot of people. Yeah, such complexity. This is the Druidcraft. Seems to be very glary. So here she does have reins. The horses are going in the same direction. Look how strong she is. Holy cow. And she has a wand. I think in most of the chariot cards, if there is a chariot driver, there is a wand in one hand. And there's lots of other symbols here too. It's a really beautiful chariot card. Okay, and definitely in motion. So that's something that I kind of really suggest you pay attention to when you're doing a reading, and that is to look at how many cards are in motion and how many cards are sitting still. And because that's going to speak volumes to what's going on in the reading. When I walk my two dogs, the young, untrained pit bull pulls me forward, sniffing everywhere, while my older Rottweiler, I have to drag her in order to move. It reminds me of the chariot every time. That's awesome. Hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure you've all seen dog walkers in that kind of situation. So, for those of you that don't have the large guidebook for the Druid craft, you make sure to get the app because there is um, it's a really really good read. So you've got 3 pages here for the chariot, and in the section on the reversed meaning for the chariot, I don't tend to read reverse cards because I feel that the surrounding cards are going to tell you which direction to go. Um, and so in this, the chariot reversed suggests that you might be wary of relying too strongly on your own willpower or force of personality to control a situation. So I don't think the chariot has to be upside down to get that message. I think the surrounding cards are going to tell you if that's the issue. You may be called on to surrender in a different but related way to that suggested in the description for the Lover's card. The acquisition of true power lies in deepening our experience and understanding of the polarities. Okay, so get this one. Kind of an important sentence. The acquisition of true power lies in deepening our experience and understanding the polarities. So if we're talking about the lovers, right? If the lovers can just be about you, right? You being as comfortable and at home in your feminine beauty, your softness, your gardening, as you are chairing the board meeting or running the pack or I don't know, doing, being in your being at the gym and doing your daily workout, right? We need to be as sweet and soft as we are strong and hard, and to know when is the right time to be one way or the other, and to know that we can't have one without the other, right? One is they are. They are one. They're the opposite side of the same thing. They're not two different things. Finding the card reversed in a reading may also indicate, okay, so I wasn't going to go there. So, yeah. And then the other little tidbit is the message from the chariot is maturity and wisdom come from courageously engaging the difficulties and life challenges. The art of success lies in knowing when to surrender and when to take control. And I would take that one step further and say when to speak and when not to speak. That's almost a really good thing to, a really good place to end. But I wanted to end with Emily carding because this is just kind of, I love this one. Look at that. So, there in this one, you really see that fiery energy behind, but the sun is behind the moon, right? So, we have this crazy kind of eclipse experience that we never get to see. And just look at the strength of the woman on the horse. Isn't that amazing? And then if you look at where the glyph is, so in this deck, this is called the glyph. The glyph is right. Look where it is on the horse. And depending on what you interpret this as on the horse, right? So I don't know anatomically where this is on the horse, but to me, this really feels like heart. So yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, yeah. If you're going to bring in chakras, I definitely see solar plexus. But I really curious about how we can weave all of this, right? So how do we weave that watery, emotional cancer energy with this fire and drive, right, of the solar plexus and this battling? And, right, I'm sure you're aware for those of you that work with the chakras, right? So, all of the anger issues and what happens if the solar plexus is out of whack. So, it's either anger or depression. And so, you might see the surrounding cards, the surrounding cup cards, the surrounding wands cards are going to give you more information on that. But that's a whole other can of worms. So I'm going to close with this card because I just thought this was so beautiful and so powerful. Okay. Behind me, the dark sun's crown burns brightly. Before me lies the song of victory. From the stars I come to show you that anything is possible when you deny defeat. The power of will is absolute, and the chariot's flight will come to all who trust their vision. Oh, this is just so awesome. Doubt not and follow dreams with action from the heart. Power must be wielded, raging forces brought together in forward motion. I am the sacred law of will and trust. I am the winged horse and the rider. I am the glorious sun and the shaded moon. Within me, two paths unite and forge a clear road to unity. I am compelled to strive and always will succeed. I fly beyond limits. I traverse all boundaries. I am progress. I am the indestructible nature of the dual soul. Take my path if you would reach your goals. Wow, isn't that amazing? Like, I can't believe, like, oh, yeah, Emily just has so, yes, that is an eclipse. And I'll just read you a little bit about the artwork. She says this is an eclipse experience that you never would get to see. Um, it's here. If you have this guidebook. I'm not going to take the time to look for it right now. I mean, it's not that much, but she says this is an eclipse, but it's not something that we would ever see, for different reasons. Yeah, so the sun and the moon together, everything intertwined and everything, yeah, everything coming together to bring wellness and wholeness and to allow us to move forward. And I guess that's the underlying message, right? If we don't bring in the balance, if we're not aware enough to bring in the balance, then the moving forward isn't going to be successful. So yeah. So I think I'm going to leave you with that for today. And do you have any thoughts what card you want to work on next week? Do you have any requests? Um, of course, I can always plan it. And it doesn't have to be a major arcanum either. We could look at a couple of different minors, that are kind of opposing or similar meaning or something like that. Temperance, yeah, we could look at temperance. Mm. So I'll look in the comments below and I'll just see if there are requests, and then we can do that, over the next few months, few weeks. And I plan to continue this as a series. And over the holidays, I'm hoping that my kids will be here, but yeah, I'm hoping just to carry on because I know that two of the Thursday nights are both on holidays, but we'll see how that goes. And if I have to, I will upload it as a premiere. Yeah. So thank you all very much for being here tonight. The eight of you that are still hanging in. And don't forget to thumbs up and write me messages, questions, comments. I love hearing from you. And yeah, I'm also, of course, I do readings by telephone and email and on FaceTime and stuff like that. So let me know if you'd like to connect that way. Stay well, everybody. Namaste.